We can all get in a shot if you want, and I'll just do the selfie thing.
I can't see the shot. I know where I'm supposed to be. Oh, good. I can do it right here.
I'll just snuggle up on the barrel.
I just want to make sure that it's
Everybody's
not just
gets.
my belly in there.
Well, we're doing good. I think we're feeling pretty respectable for the practice. This guy's too in shape.
Or at least it's in the right order.
Yeah.
So let's give these a shot. These are, they're both very young bourbons. We talked about young whiskey earlier, and these are nothing that we would necessarily put out to market, but I think it's pretty cool to taste the progress. And for us, this represents some grain bill experimentation, which is now informing this year's, or 6 months later's, bourbon production. So what we've got is a 4-grain bourbon with a higher wheat content, and then a 4-grain bourbon with a higher oat content. And I think it's pretty surprising. I'm stoked for you guys to try
for our
these.
corn, wheat, oats, malted barley?
Corn, wheat, oats, and malted barley in the form of a blend of both crystal malt and roasted barley. So they're both specialty malts that lend a little bit more
crystal
flavor.
malt thing is crazy.
Yeah.
We did some crystal malt at the distillery.
So I'm going to do a side-by-side pour on these. And I think even if you lost track of which is which, I think you'll be able to tell.
You should have poured those without us looking.
That's okay.
A good thing I wasn't paying attention.
Yours. You get this glass.
So is this one mine?
These are both yours.
Oh, okay. There was still some of the white dog in that, but that's okay.
Let me redo it then.
I love that. I love it.
Sorry if that went in your shoe.
Yeah, it's his shoe. I don't care.
Honest officer, I was at a distillery yesterday.
All right, I'm gonna put this down and.
So you clearly you can tell where it came from when you nose it.
Let me redo yours just because I lost track of which one went to that glass.
It was that one.
Oh, it was. Okay, great.
So. All right, so this is the younger one. Well, I should.
These are more or less identical.
Identical.
Ages.
Okay.
Yeah, and but the difference being one has more wheat and one has more oats. They all have all 4 grains.
Got it.
And I think a big thing that you'll get is the toasted barrel that it goes into. It gets to those wood sugars more quickly than if it was just charred. And this is what I was talking about earlier now again, I'm not going to send this into the San Francisco Spirits Comp, nor do we really send anything in there ever, but this is, to me, represents bourbon that's young, that has gotten better than, or more complex than White Dog, but it hasn't hit the downswing where it starts to get kind of rough around the edges and really needs the time. Again, I wouldn't put this in the bottle for sale, but I think it's kind of interesting. It's got like
I'm sorry. Did you say how long it's been? In the
6 months.
6 months.
So
Okay,
very young.
Very young.
Yeah.
And within a few proof points of you said that's 110. This is 104.
Yep. This one's 104, and I think this one's 106. I can't quite see. Yeah, 106.6.
It's crazy how much flavor it picked up in 6 months.
That's really. These are actually quite good too. I mean, that's. We've been trying a lot of young whiskeys lately, and the general theme seems to be that that could be something in another 2 years.
Yeah.
These with 6 months.
I'm having a really hard time just pouring it out.
I mean, there's a lot of honey.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they both have merit. What we decided on was, while I really like the quality from the higher oat one, it's just got this like nuttier note to it. And it's,
they're so different on the nose.
Yeah.
I think the wheat is a little bit more of a traditional flavor, even though it still has a lot of bacon qualities to it. We're doing more or less a blend of the two in our grain bill now.
Yeah, this one has a little bit sweeter taste. This one's more of a honey-ish kind of taste.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, how does, or what's the mechanism for...
Got some distance on that one.
Yeah.
There's almost no presence of alcohol on the tongue with that, but it's a little bit higher proof than this, and this has got the tingle to it.
Yeah, yeah. I think,
not hot at all.
Right. I know what you're talking about. There's a few things. I can't say this with scientific certainty. I tend to think that it's the tannins that come through in the barrel, and that can happen in even well-matured stuff.
So it may not be proof at all, but I feel it may be something around the dryness of the tannins.
To me, I think of that as like texture, almost architecture? And is it like silky? Is it prickly? Is it like, where is that? Or you mentioned at one point, one of you did, about something almost having like a cola-like quality or like a carbonation to it. That's like, I get that with barrels that have too much tannin. Not even too much, but like we'll taste some export barrel American single malt stuff. And that gives me like a little bit of like almost a carbonation feel. Yeah. There's a lot that goes into it. I mean, there's.
I've gotten mixed up.
Oh, that's okay. Feel free to report.
I think it's this one. This is amazing.
It is quite good.
I mean, it's neat and it's young. It's like,
yeah, but given all that,
yeah.
If you were to pour me some of that and say, "What do you think of that?" Right. I'd go, "That is remarkably interesting."
Yeah.
I'm not
going
to say that tastes like 10-year-old bourbon,
right?
But it's remarkably interesting and enjoyable.
Yeah. I mean, it's got like a lot of nice. You mentioned like the honey quality, and it's like biscuity. It's neat, good flavors. I mean, I'm excited to see where this goes in 3 more years.
It's that one that I had the last time.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, they're different.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy how different, and the difference. Only difference is how much wheat versus oak, right?
Yes.
And
one is like. Let me check. I got the grain bill actually written down right here.
It's nice to be at the rack house and you just
I sent some
walk
folks
over there and
some
look.
samples of it too, and I filled too many.
Amazing. This is fun pouring whiskey on the floor.
I keep forgetting to do it.
My wife is going to kill me when I do this tomorrow when I'm home.
Just in the living room.
What the hell are you doing? That's what we do at the distillery.
All right, so
We strive for authenticity.
it's 71% corn, 21% either wheat or oats. I'm going to read this one, the case of the higher wheat one. So 71% corn, 21% wheat, 4% oats, 4% malt. So we flip-flop that 21% and 4% with wheat or oats.
And this one is the oat. That one just kills me.
That is good.
That just blows me away.
Yeah.
Both of them are good. The mouthfeel on the oat, the higher oat, is incredible. I mean, the higher wheat is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, when I sipped this, I wanted to say, "Oh, that's really smooth." You know, that was the first impression across the tongue, and the mouthfeel was good. This one is just flavors.
I just can't get over how, because I mean, that's what got all this started. Was we try and branch out, we try and go to these smaller distilleries. You end up with 18-month or 2-month or 3-year-old whiskey.
Yes.
It gets in your mouth, and you just go. It's nothing like that.
Yeah.
How did you do that?
I mean, it is. I think a lot of them, some like are following advice of traditional production methods that doesn't work at young maturation points. There's some are running stills that are really like they need that time. They're making those cuts. They're being kind of greedy about, but they're pulling in big
business.
Yeah, exactly. Their yields are better. Their efficiencies are better. It's just embracing inefficiencies and saying like, how can we run this well? How do we run our still? We run our still slower. It takes longer. We have to pay people to be there to babysit the stills. But it's every process. It's just intention through and through, and we're not unique to it. I mean, it's just I think. What craft distilleries are really starting to figure out, or maybe they knew from day one, was where can they put their fingerprint on it and still have something incredibly viable. I think what gets really interesting is when you get further along and you start to get these complexities from, and this goes to the fermentation, and if you can slow down and not be so uber efficient about everything. We do a 4-day open ferment, and that's not the longest out there, but it's longer than a lot of the big operations because they're striving for efficiency. And what happens in that is, it only takes about 48 hours for the yeast, the Saccharomyces, to eat all of that sugar and spit out all the alcohol. And then for another 2 days, what we're allowing to happen is the native flora, yes, some wild yeast, but primarily lactobacillus. That's a big one. The bacteria that settles in, that's naturally occurring on the grain dust, but it's all over the place. There's lacto in the air.
It's good for
There's
you.
lacto on my shoulders. That's right.
We have very healthy guts.
But letting it sit on that fermentation for 2 days or so, sometimes go a little bit longer, you're imparting organic acids, and if you sip it off the fermenter, it's going to taste like a warm, flat, sour beer, if somebody didn't know any better. What those organic acids do over time, after distillation and after sitting in the barrel, and ultimately oxidizing in the barrels, is generate a whole nother layer of complexities and really fruit notes. And people talk about terroir, the French term of taste of place, and it's often associated with wine and grapes. And I get it with grapes. It makes sense that if you grew grapes here versus there, you could taste the difference. In distilling, we're doing so many processes that, to to me, I feel like we're losing a lot of that. But what we do have that is really undeniable is the native flora in the air that exists here that might be different 30 minutes down the road in Salida, or for sure different on the Front Range.
And it's being introduced at a point where you're part way through, or you could even be finished with fermentation.
Yes, absolutely.
And now you're really able to not confuse the two, it
Right.
seems like.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, we're letting the fermentation happen, and then the bacteria comes in and does its thing. And you need, it doesn't happen quick. You know, that oxidation of those organic acids, it takes at least 2 years. And it really starts to pop for us at 3 to 4 years. We've got some single malt at 7 years.
And make sure people remember, too, when we talk about single malt, some people's mind will go to Scotland. The difference between new barrels and used barrels is gigantic.
That is gigantic, as is our climate. I mean,
Yeah.
I hate to throw out the, like, we're at altitude, that's why our stuff's awesome. Maybe. I've never gotten to really
It's got to
try
matter, though, right?
It does have to
Part
matter.
of this is the distillate going in and out of the wood.
Yes.
That's got to change at altitude. The pressures are different.
Yeah.
The temperature changes are different.
Yeah, yeah. The temperature changes are drastic. The barometric changes are pretty drastic. You know, the humidity or lack of is pretty drastic. Yeah,
Is your evaporation rate greater?
huge.
Yeah.
It's
What are you losing second year on?
at close to 12 to 14%. It's preposterous. So much so that I look at it, I'm like I know that Amy's aware of it. At some point, she's like, "What are you doing? Put a humidifier."
You're drinking it all, aren't you?
Yeah, it's tough. We lose a ton.
Is that part of the flavor and
It
the outcome,
absolutely
or is there something you try and think about? What could I do about that? You know, could you miss this whole area?
We could put a humidifier in here. I mean, a lot of places will humidify to 70%
Because
humidity.
Kentucky, they're typically 8 to 9%
Humidity?
loss per year.
Oh, yeah,
after
somewhere
the
around
first
there.
year. The first
Yeah.
year it soaks up a bunch.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Big loss the first year.
So you're 50 to 75% more loss per year. to
Again,
evaporation.
not math, but
You lose more.
yes.
Not math.
Yeah, yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
I like math.
Oh, it's terrible.
I like simple math.
Yeah.
Speaking of not terrible stuff, let's.
Yeah, so let's move on to. So this is our most recent bourbon bottling.
You guys are talking. I'm like, this is whiskey. What's wrong with you people?
This one actually is something we'll do a lot of times. If you'll notice up there on the top of that second stack, there's 2 barrels of green spots on them. That is our most recent blend of bourbon barrels that we put back into the barrel. So a lot of times we'll have barrels that maybe the culmination of a blend, let's just average it out to 3 years. Well, it might be in there for another year. And then we get to taste what's in the bottle, and then what it tastes like after it's been in the barrel even longer.
Cool.
That's kind of just a thing that we geek out on, but it's fun to do. So this one's 110 proof currently.
May I ask, what do you go in the barrel at, proof-wise?
We go in the barrel at 105, give or take. We're not
Love
super
you.
scientific about it. Yeah,
Love it.
yeah, exactly. And it's the point of that is there's different aspects of solubility, be it a water-soluble compound or an ethanol-soluble compound. Am I going in with more water added at the beginning? We're, in theory, getting less of the harsh astringent compounds that take a while to break down. We're getting more of those baking spices out of the barrel. And then also, if we're going to proof down, we don't have to add as much water, which I don't like water. I mean, I drink it because I have to, but it doesn't have a lot of flavor. And
any flavor.
no,
It really shouldn't have a lot of flavor.
I like it about as much as I like air. I mean, you need
gotta have
right?
air,
Right? Yeah.
That's great. So you could go in at 125. You're going in at 105.
Yeah, we go in at 105.
And it's
raises
coming out at...
between 107 and 110 typically.
Whoa.
It raises over the years. Now, again, this represents our bourbon that we've made over the last 4 years. And we've shifted our stance on our bourbon a bit, bringing it a little closer to center. So I think that this bourbon, I love it. I find it to be, to me, I think of it as like a wintertime bourbon. It's
Yeah,
like,
a lot of spice to it, like a lot
Yeah,
of clove. And
exactly.
Christmassy feel, you know?
Yep.
But also, when I nosed it, I was like, I want barbecue. You know? There's like that sweetness of barbecue sauce or something.
I get that as well.
Yeah, that's really neat.
Yeah, it's neat stuff. I'm really proud of this. I get some like dark, almost like if you put a cherry pie in the oven for a little too long.
Yeah,
You get some of that in there.
That's delicious.
It's good, isn't it?
But I want to bring our bourbon closer to center, so I think this represents a bourbon that
I wouldn't drink that and think it gets there.
No, it's going to be neat to see where this goes in a few more years. But I'm happy with this.
I do taste what I taste here, though.
Yeah.
As far as that initial,
Yeah.
lots of corn, like bready.
The base flavor is there. It's
Yeah.
just this seems more
And
mature,
I was
complex.
probably engulfed in the flavor, but did we talk about how old this is?
Yeah, lightly. This one, it was a blend of a bunch of barrels. I'd have to look at the records to know exactly how many, but it was a mix of 3 to 4 year old barrels with one just, I want to say it was just over 2 years. And that 2-year barrel, actually, interestingly, that 2-year barrel that we put in there was the very first bourbon that we made with our yeast when we switched. So we switched from USW 6, I believe it is, which is one of the most traditional bourbon yeasts out there.
Yeah.
I'm probably getting the numbers and letters a little confused. And we switched to M1, which is traditionally used in malt production, but we find is working killer in our bourbon, our rye, corn, everything.
I got like a little peppermint right on the end of that. That's really cool.
Well, I know, I want to. We all started this with young whiskey, and I think if sitting at the house, I'd open that up. It's young.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the unpleasant part of young whiskeys to me always ends up being that graininess where it just hasn't had time to do its thing, or I've got this mouthful of char. And I don't mind char,
Right.
But it's always ding ding ding. That's young. It got a lot of the char. It hadn't had time to do its thing.
Yeah.
For the rest of it.
Yeah.
But I don't get that. I don't get the big mouthful of char. It's entirely enjoyable.
Well, you bring up an interesting point. Like, I think that I hate to ever say, like, well, that stuff over there is not great whiskey at its age. But that is the case sometimes. But what's interesting is, like, as we've talked about, one can make a phenomenal whiskey under 4 years old, at the 2-year mark even, if they strive for that and do that. But then I think another interesting point is, well, what does a good young whiskey taste like? Because young isn't, obviously young's not flavor. It's something we can associate flavors to. Well, one thing that I find interesting is some of the most delicious whiskeys that are technically young, let's call them like 2 years old or even younger. What does that taste like? I get a lot of raisin notes and I get a lot of baking spices. I don't get the traditional, like, more oxidized flavors that are more common to
Vanillas
bourbons.
and
Yeah, and even like, God, like some of those like fruit notes that are typical to high corn grain bills in a bourbon. They just there's that familiarity. That's not there yet.
Yeah.
But what is there can still be really nice. Like
It just isn't normal.
No,
Yeah.
it's not.
And if you haven't watched it, but if you watch our YouTube videos, I can't hide that.
yeah, I hear you.
There's a ton of videos of me going,
Yeah.
Yeah.
what the hell is that?
Those are our most
Yeah.
entertaining ones.
Yeah. Well, that happens.
It's something I say a lot, but I got it from Jackie Zykan, the master
Old Forester.
taster.
Yeah.
But she'll say stuff like, "There's no bad flavors," and that got me because I went, "That's important." There's absolutely zero disagreeable flavor from here to here.
Right.
I think that's commendable because there's just too many whiskeys you get that are on the shelf being sold commercially that there's just ugly flavors in them.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like it's an interesting journey that a distillery has that's not a heritage brand, and Al Law from Laws had said at one point, it takes about 10 years for a distillery to find its flavor. And when he said that, I was like, I don't know if I agree with that. And the more I thought about it, I was like, no, I'm 100% on board with that statement. Actually, he's right. It takes a while. And then maybe it could be longer than 20 years.
The distillery equivalent of that 10,000 hours thing to be a professional.
Yeah. It's, I I love this bourbon, but it's not the bourbon that I want to keep working.
Yeah.
And I like to listen to other distillers and other distillery owners. And I heard something recently from, I think it was Dan Garrison of the Garrison Brothers, who said, every day we're going to be making better bourbon. I love that philosophy that what's the best? I don't know. Are you ever the best? Maybe not, but you can always keep going. And that's what we're doing.
And right now, after a couple of minutes, there's a little, like a cherry sucker.
Yeah.
Just stuck right up in the top.
Yep. I definitely
That's
get
good.
that cherry in there.
Since we talk about value and things a lot, at retail, what is this? So
That is typically 50, although sometimes you can find it for 47, thereabout. So,
we talk about value. We don't quibble over dollars like that.
Right. No, well, I mean, that's something that I like to think about, too. Like, it's,
Well, I mean, we always think about, so what's the other thing I could buy? So
Right.
if I'm going to tell somebody
I
to
do too.
try this, There's a lot of other things in that range. There's 8 and 10-year-old,
Yeah.
like you said, what you call them, not legacy,
Heritage
brands.
Yeah.
I can buy a bottle of Russell's Reserve single barrel
Totally.
with that.
Yeah. I was just drinking some 2 nights ago. It's delicious. We try to think about that a lot because we don't have those efficiencies of scale. You know, when I walk into a place like Old Forester is an example. They're smaller distillery, but they're a distillery in Louisville that's specifically not the rest of the Brown-Forman thing, but Old Forester. I walked around, I was like, there's not that many employees. Like, there was a guy making barrels because they have Cooper Jones, like, and that's cool. But some of those places, I walk around, like, you have almost as many employees working as I do. And you're making so much more whiskey than I do. So, I guess, point being, I want our stuff to be, like, I'm not trying to outcompete anyone on the lowest price out there, but I want people to be able to.
Well, another thing we talk about, though, that's super important, that's why I ask these kind of questions. What would bring me to say, okay, I'm going to branch out and give 50 for this instead of this other thing? Well, let me tell you, in my opinion, what it is. The toast on the barrel, that you spent that time to do that. The low barrel entry proof. The fact that it comes out and doesn't get a lot of water put in it. That all matters, because it doesn't matter if you use the exact same water that you distilled with. When you come back and water it later to bring it down to proof, it's just not the same.
Right.
So those things to me add up to now that equivalency of value is tilting more in that favor.
If you want to really get kind of weird about what we do.
And we do. We do want to get weird.
So this does have water in it, but that water has actually been barrel aged for 2 years.
Are you kidding?
So we don't get to do that all the time, but on top of that stack, there's some barrel aged water. So what we do is we take the same whiskey and we'll add enough to the barrel full of water to get to about 14% alcohol, 15% alcohol. So it's like stable in the barrel. It's not going to pick up any weird funk or like kind of turn in an odd way. But then, so the water even that we're adding has flavor. We're letting that sit in there.
Does anybody else do that?
It's a brandy tradition of sorts. It's more of a European thing. I'm positive other distillers are doing it. It's just like it's not all that viable to do. Maybe it is. I don't know. We don't have a space for like a warehouse.
You need a water rack house.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, but still, it's less water than if you had gone in at 125 and wanted to bring it down.
Yeah, and it's less. It's flavorful, and there's another aspect of bringing the proof down that I'm somewhere on the fence on. That is a practice that's referred to as like slow proofing, or there's some other terms associated with it. And that's also more of a European tradition, often used in brandy, where you'll just slowly add water over time. Now, I've talked about experimentation a few times, like as we were discussing things. That's one where I was like, you know what, I can do this experiment. So I've got 2 jars over there that are full of 2-year-old brandy. And one every couple days, I'll throw a half ounce of RO water in there, and I record the proof. And one, I'm waiting till the proof drops from, it was pretty high. We made that brandy a bit ago. Sometimes we'll go into the higher proof with the brandy. I think it was maybe 110, 120, and we're trying to bring it down to about 100 or 90, somewhere around there. We'll proof the other one down immediately, let them sit for a month, because it takes a while. Once you add the water, it needs to, we refer to as bottle shock. But we're going to see, I hear a lot of people touting the slow proof process. I don't know, maybe it does something, maybe not, I don't know.
I want to taste it right when you proof the other one down.
I would like to
at least
taste it too. Yeah, exactly. Taste it, but then I want to give it a month, or 2 months even.
It's got to marry, but I just wouldn't know right then. All this slow, dump it in, proof it, taste them right.
I totally agree. I think that would be interesting.
Beautiful.
So,
This has been great.
I want to taste some single malt.
I do. Let's